Hello everyone. Today I'm going to start a rollicking tale of humor and enchantment with a book by Ruskin Bond, Rusty and the Magic Mountain. Rusty and his friends Pitambar and Popat find adventure in no small measure when they set out to climb a mysterious mountain steeped in legend and superstition. On their way, they shelter in a haunted rest house, encounter a tiger, and experience a hilarious mule ride, which takes them to a palace of a mad Rani who is always surrounded by hundreds of crows. So let's begin. Adventure is for the adventurous. Don't go up there, said the old man reclining in the shade of a peepal tree. There's a lot of magic on that mountain. What kind of magic? Asked Rusty, just out of school and looking for adventure. Black magic or white magic? What do you know of black magic, son? Nothing much, but BBG, our neighbor, says there are spirits on the mountain and not all of them are friendly. But if you are pure of heart, they cannot harm you. The Devi protects you. The old peepal tree stood just outside the grounds of the Forest Research Institute, and from its vantage point, one could see the ranges to the north, with the summit of Witch Mountain towering above the rest. Even the late spring, it was covered with a thin mantle of snow. Rusty felt a strong urge to climb that mountain and see if it really held any magic, good or bad. He had been reading a lot and going to the cinema once a week, but something seemed to be missing from his life. Adventure, that was it. His adventure wind was calling to him, and he had to respond. This adventure wind was something he had discovered a year or two ago when he was at boarding school in Shimla. It was a certain kind of breeze that sprang up suddenly, almost from nowhere, and it made his flesh tingle and his mind feel light and free, ready for almost anything. Boarding school had its own restrictions, so he had to be satisfied with dashing about on the playing field, or indulging in a dormitory pillow fight, or singing very loudly and very badly outside the staff common room and getting a flogging for his pains. Dehra, being in a valley, was not a very windy place, but on that particular afternoon a soft breeze came down from Sirmoor Hills, ruffled his hair and teased his cheeks, and he knew he was going to do something just a little crazy, just a little dangerous. And there was the mountain, overshadowing all the others, daring Rusty to come up and be friends with it. And it wasn't only his desire for adventure that made him want to climb that faraway mountain. After all, there were lots of mountains, range upon range of them, stretching away towards the eternal snow, all offering something exciting by way of birds and animals, waterfalls, streams, forests, and rivers. But it was this particular mountain that intrigued him. Witch Mountain, as it was called, even by those who had never been there, with its legends of strange inhabitants, ruined palaces, and occasional earth tremors. There was mystery there, and treasure too, from what he had heard. Rusty didn't just want to write a mystery, he wanted to live one. Mum, he said when he got home, I'm thinking of climbing Witch Mountain. I'll be away for a few days. Who is going with you? Asked his mother. You can't go on your own. It isn't safe. There are strange tales about that palace. And the place itself. It's only a mountain. It's a wild place, full of leopards and bears. There are no roads. No one lives on that mountain. You could have an accident. There is a curse upon it, from what I have heard. I'll be careful. Even the most careful of men can be crushed by a falling boulder. That sounds like a proverb. Did you just make it up? I must use it in one of my stories. Well, stay at home and write a story, much safer, or help me in the hotel. Since his granny's death, Rusty's mother had been managing their small hotel in Dehra. They were going through hard times financially, but the job had helped towards paying Rusty's school fees. I want to live on one of my stories, Mum. Well, take someone with you. I'll ask Bhim to join me. But Bhim was preparing for his NDA exam and had no time for adventures that were not part of his single minded pursuit of an army career. Everyone seemed to be preparing for exams of one kind or another, but Rusty had had enough of exams. They would keep up for another day. He had been sitting in classrooms for more than 10 years of his life, and he did not want to see another desk or blackboard anytime soon. Don't you want to go to college? Asked his mother. Not now, Mom. Let me enjoy a little freedom. Wandering through the Arhat Bazaar, which was full of grain merchants' shop, Rusty spied little Popat Lal, with whom he sometimes played cricket. Popat was very small for his 15 years, almost a midget, but he was a wily leg spinner bowler. Both he and Rusty were members of the same cricket team, the Doon All Stars, and on weekdays they played against some local teams, usually on patches of waste ground on the outskirts of the town. No cricket next week, said Popat when he saw Rusty. Exams, I suppose? No, I have finished this exam this year, but my father wants me to go to Chakrata to collect some money that's owed to him. Chakrata? But that's where I'm going. And from there I'm headed towards Deoban and then up the Witch Mountain. Let's go together. I can't climb mountains, said Popat. And no one goes to that mountain any more, not since the earthquake damaged the temple and most of the buildings. It's a wilderness now, my father tells me. But you can come up with me up to Chakrata. That's fine. From there I could carry on my own by myself. No, don't go alone. There is a curse on that place. People have disappeared from there. But I have nobody else to come up with me. Maybe my cousin Pitambar can accompany you. Is he a student? No, he is free these days, looking for a job. Meet me near the clock tower this evening. I'll introduce you to Pitambar. Now I must help my father with his accounts. And Popat returned to the interior of the grain shop, while Rusty, hands in his pockets, sauntered home to tell his mother that he had found someone to accompany him on his trek to the Witch Mountain. Chaat Wali Gali. Rusty found Popat awaiting for him beneath the banyan tree opposite the clock tower. For once, the clock tower was showing the correct time, 6 p.m., and the good citizens of Dehra were out on the streets, shopping, eating, gossiping, more or less in that order. Where's your cousin? Asked Rusty. He's expecting us, said Popat, leading Rusty through the evening throng to a shady avenue where a small crowd was watching a wrestling match. There were 2 young men in the wrestling pit, struggling to throw each other down. Their sweat, mingled with the mud from the pit, gave their gleaming bodies a superhuman aspect. All they wore were their tight langotis. They were both tall young men, and their muscles stood out as they heaved and slithered around in the mud. This is what Superman really looks like, thought Rusty, not dressed up for a fashion parade. There was no victor. Both emerged from the akhada, the best of friends, promising to meet each other again the following week. The taller one, grinning and beating his chest, approached Popatlal. So, you are giving me a party, little brother? What is it all about? To meet my friend Rusty, Popat said. And is Rusty a wrestler? Pitambar asked, giving the embarrassed boy an appraising look. Never wrestled in my life, said Rusty. Well, I can give you some lessons if you like. But where is the party? Popatlal is a nice boy, but he always has a matlab. He doesn't give a party without a reason. Well, come along to Chaat Wali Gali and we'll tell you the reason. Pitambar was a chaat lover and he lost no time taking a bath and getting into his kurta and pajama. The 3 of them set off for the famous gully, a popular destination for young people with large appetites. What do you prefer, tikkis or golgappas? Asked Popat. I'll start with tikkis, said Pitambar. An admiring crowd watched as the 6 foot 3 inch wrestler put away a dozen potato tikkis and then started on the golgappas, fried wheat cups filled with spicy tamarind water. There was no limit to the number of golgappas that Pitambar could consume. We'll have another party when we'll get back from our expedition, said Popat, and proceeded to tell his cousin about Rusty's plan. I'm with you, said Pitambar enthusiastically. But what will we eat once we are up on the mountains? We'll find out when we get there, said Popat. But I can see you are still hungry. Let's try the pakoras next door. Rusty liked pakoras too, especially the ones made with onions, and soon the three of them were stuffing themselves with hot fried pakoras. Popat paid for the tikkis and the golgappas, and Rusty paid for the pakoras. Pitambar gave a satisfied belch and suggested to visit Bengali sweet shop. When we come back, assured Popat, who would finish his pocket money. I'm saving for the journey, said Rusty. So Pitambar had to be content with the evening's party and the promise of more to come. They agreed to meet at the bus stand early the next morning. There are 3 of us, Rusty told his mother that night. One of them is a Pahalwan, so you have nothing to worry about, Mom. We'll back in a week. And what are you going to live on? Fresh air, I suppose. Well, I have saved 2 months' pocket money. You can advance me next month's, and I have sold that old radio to the kabadi. He gave me 200 rupees for it. 200 rupees went a long way when Rusty was a boy, so he wasn't worried about running short of money. And he knew Popat was clever with money and always kept something in reserve. Pitambar did not seem to care at all about money, and Rusty had taken a liking to him and looked forward to his company. Pitambar was like a young lion, always playful and in a good mood except when he was hungry. Rusty did not sleep much that night. He kept thinking of the morrow and what it would bring. And he was sure he could persuade Popat to come all the way with him, not just up to the Chakrata. Outside the window, a nightjar kept up a monotonous call in the mango tree. Was it a good omen or a bad omen? Wondered Rusty. And just before he fell asleep, he remembered something his granny had once said. Always expect something good to happen. Good thoughts and feelings usually lead to good results. The breakdown of a bus. Rusty was up and about at first light. He put up a few essentials into his haversack, shouted a hurried goodbye to his mother, who was only half awake, and set off for the intercity bus stand. Popat was waiting for him. Where is Pitambar? Asked Rusty. He should be here soon. Perhaps he changed his mind. If so, he'll go without him. The Chakrata bus was filling up, and the driver and ticket collector were finishing their tea in a nearby dhaba. The sun rose over the distant hills, promising a fine spring morning. The driver entered his cabin and blew his horn. There was no sign of Pitambar. The boys got into the bus and took their seats. The horn blew again. Looks like he isn't coming, said Rusty. Just then there was a commotion outside. Stray dogs, hens, and a cow all ran for safety as a bicycle came flying down the road, crashing into the vegetable stall and depositing its rider into a heap of cabbages and cauliflowers. Pitambar emerged from the surrounding greenery, asked the owner of the stall to look after his bicycle, and jumped onto the bus, which was now moving slowly out of the depot. Sorry to be late, bhai, he said, settling down in an empty seat, but I thought it better to have my breakfast before leaving. You did well, said Popat, because it may be some time before we stop anywhere. They were soon in the countryside, driving through fields of yellow mustard and young sugar cane. The mango trees were just coming into blossom, and their heady fragrance was everywhere. Soon they were passing through the Yamuna valley towards Kalsi, the last hamlet before the mountain road began. Here an Ashoka rock inscription marked the extent of the Emperor Ashoka's rule in the 3rd century. Early rulers always seemed to stop short of sending their armies into the mountains. Thus far and no farther, the great ranges seemed to say. It was an old bus, and it groaned and rattled as it took the steep, winding road above Kalsi. It must have covered that route hundreds of times. On this particular day, it decided to take a break from the endless business of carrying people up and down the mountain, and taking a break meant a breakdown. The overloaded bus just gave up and refused to go any further. So sorry, said the driver. There's nothing I can do. It will be hours before another bus gets here, and it will probably be full. So why not walk to the next village stop? It's only 5 miles away. You will get refreshments there. 5 miles? Most of the passengers grumbled and sat down at the side of the road. Others took the opportunity to go and relieve themselves among the wild lantana bushes. Shall we walk? Asked Poppet. Better than sitting here, said Rusty. If there are refreshments ahead, we must walk, said Pitambar with a logic of his own. And so the three of them walked and walked and walked. I think the benefits of walking are highly overrated, said Rusty after some time. Gives you an appetite, said Pitambar, striding ahead with an air of purpose. There is nothing to beat lying down, said Poppet, especially on a hot, dusty day like this. Do you think we should return to Dehra, Rusty? It will be easier walking downhill. Don't give up so easily. The adventure has only begun. Adventures are for the adventurous, said Poppet philosophically. Sometimes they happen by accident, put in Pitambar, like the time I got on the wrong train. I was in such a hurry to catch the night train to Delhi that I got on to the Lucknow mail by mistake. And what happened? They took me off the train at Haridwar, then someone stole my money and I had to come home in the kind villager's bullock cart. You must have been very hungry. I kept chewing up the farmer's sugar cane until we got into town. Sugar cane can keep you going for days. But there isn't any here, said Poppet, and I am thirsty. If you take a long walk in the plains, you can walk for miles before the view or the scenery changes. But in the hills, a new vista opens up at every bend in the road. At one moment, you are looking at a bare hillside. You turn a corner, and there before you is a belt of spruce trees or pines. Another bend in the road, and you have to tread carefully along a narrow path. Then there is a meadow, and you can roll around on the grass. At varying heights, there are different birds, different flowers, different trees, and different views. Rusty picked a blue periwinkle from the shelter of a large rock. What do you want that for? Asked Pitambar. Can you eat it? You can try, but it's pretty, isn't it? Of what use is a wild flower? Asked Pitambar. Well, this one is very useful, said Rusty, recalling a science lesson. It's a periwinkle. Its essence is used in drugs to cure cancer. Is that so? Said Poppet, taking an interest. One of my uncles has cancer. Will it help if he eats these flowers? I don't think so, said Rusty. Making the drug is a chemical process, but I am not much good at chemistry, so I can't tell you how it's done exactly. Pitambar had plucked the flower by then and put it in his mouth. He spat it out in a hurry. Very bad, was his comment. Fortunately for their mood, another bend in the road revealed a small wayside tea stall, where refreshments were available. Close by, a spring of pure mountain water trickled out of a bed of ferns and soft moss. The boys sank down on a wooden bench under the shade of an old deodar tree. Now this is heaven, said Pitambar, and proceeded to make a quick assessment of all that the shop had to offer by way of nourishment.